feel, just sitting here, the momentum is starting to feel to me like there are a lot more people who are moving themselves into the Jayden Daniels at #1 territory. You're on the ground for us in Indy. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are definitely people that feel that way, but the question is, how do the Chicago Bears feel about it, right? I mean, so as long as they are thinking Caleb Williams at #1, then it really doesn't matter what anyone else's opinion is. But it is interesting that Jayden Daniels is getting that level of buzz. He's impressing teams. There's no question about it. It's a big week for Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is a guy we've heard a lot of stuff about over the last few months, right? A lot of reports, some stuff flying around. Does he want a piece of equity in the team, all this kind of stuff. This is a chance this week for teams to get in front of him and to hear everything in his own words. And so it's an important week for him to solidify his status as that #1 pick. And I guess it's entirely possible that things could happen. Maybe the Bears trade down a spot or two and somebody moves up to take Jayden Daniels. But as of now, the sense I'm getting is most people seem to think it will be Caleb to the Bears at #1.
And so again, Caleb Williams will address the media right around 55 minutes from now. We will turn that around for you the moment he has spoken with the most interesting things. Lewis, in the meantime, the evaluations continue. And as you were the first person I heard saying this, and then Danny jumped in with both feet yesterday. As you're watching the tape, the people who are saying, you know what, maybe Jayden at #1, what is it they're seeing?
Look, they're seeing like a repeatable skill set, meaning it's something that every week you saw Jayden Daniels operate with maximum efficiency inside the pocket, outside the pocket, decision-making, tight window throws, touch passes, changing the launch point in terms of design rollouts, creating when outside of structure when things broke down. The mechanics with which he throws the football, nice, tight, compact release. It was never one of these long wind-up type of releases or an abbreviated release that made it look like he was pushing the football. It's just very smooth. It's very consistent. His ability to make good decisions in the RPO game, his ability to break big plays in the running game. Look, the one thing that people really want to knock this young man on is some of his decision-making in terms of taking big hits. And he took some absolute haymakers this year that really, I think these are the kind of things that you can coach him out of. But outside of that, you cannot find many flaws with the way this guy played this year. You just can't. And he had the respect of one of the greatest coaches of all time, if not the greatest coach of all time, and that being Nick Saban, who basically said, we couldn't find a way to stop him. We simply had no answer for this guy. And I think his game translates perfectly to the NFL. And I'm telling you this, from what I heard in terms of some of his meetings that he has had, he comes off super smart. He knew exactly what this offense entailed last year at LSU. He could explain it from A to Z. And he's someone, I'm telling you, there are people who think that this guy is the best quarterback in this draft. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to go #1, but I right now have him basically neck and neck. And really what it's going to be about the comfort level that a team has with him that's going to decide it ultimately. And he may wind up being the best pro. We'll see. But I'm right there right now. These guys, him and Caleb, to me, are 1 and 1.
And so maybe Graziano made the most important point of all, which is at the end of the day, 32 different teams can have their own opinions. Only one of them is going to make the first pick in this draft. And if it is Chicago and they like Caleb Williams, it may not matter how much momentum there is in other places. So, Mike T, this was your job in 2 different places. You were the general manager, the Jets and the Dolphins. You stack a board. You've got your quarterback 1, quarterback 2, quarterback 3. At this moment, and we recognize there's still 2 months left in the evaluation process, at this moment, how would you stack your board, Mike T, if you were making the pick?
Yeah, this is what's so fascinating for me. Right now, it's Caleb Williams #1, it's Drake May #2, and it's Jayden Daniels #3. And boy, is it close. Greeny, this is 2004 all over again, where you have Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, and Ben Roethlisberger, and they're all great. The biggest concern that I have, and when I've talked to teams about Caleb Williams, is Greeny. He was sacked 83 times and 32 fumbles, and he's being coached by Lincoln Riley, a really good coach in 2 different places. That is a concern. You talk to people about Drake May, you hear a lot of comps about Phillip Rivers and how smart he is. He lost a lot of production with Josh Downs, but because of his size and his intelligence, there's a lot of people, there's about 20% of the league that may have Drake May #1. And then Jayden Daniels, totally agree with what Lewis said. He has had he really outplayed Caleb Williams this year. That doesn't mean he's going to go number one. The only knock I have about Jayden Daniels is he built to last. He got to Arizona State. He was only 180 pounds. He's thin, and that's something he's going to have to work on. Can it be sustainable? But he had an unbelievable 2-year run at LSU, and really all three have a chance to be great. And I think this debate will go on for the next 2 months.
Yep.
Absolutely. And again, let's see if it is ultimately the Bears who wound up making the pick. But D Wood, we had a good conversation yesterday when you were on the radio show with Hembo and me, where you boil it down at the end of its day for people who are concerned about the size. You boil it down to what is football? At the end of the day, what is football about? Who is it really meant to be played by?
Big people beat little people. It really is. And that, that's why Mike Tannenbaum brought up a concern. And that's a concern I have with Jayden Daniels. He's a slightly built young man. He's not short or anything, but he is slightly built. And in this game, in the professional game, the most important thing is your availability. Well, the hits that Lewis had talked about with Jayden Daniels, if you're taking those type of hits on this level, you're not going to be available that often. So that's an issue that has to be coached up as far as avoiding those type of hits. But Greeny, I will say this about Jayden Daniels. I think his game is the most transferable to the National Football League. His ability to process what's in front of him, his ability to play on schedule, his ability to play off schedule, and most importantly, when everything hits the fan, when teams are blitzing you, his ability to be accurate in man-to-man coverage, he does it better than any of the other two prospects that we're talking about. So for me, he will be my number one guy, but he needs to get coached out of taking those big hits because he will not be available if he doesn't change that.
Graziano, it was a year ago today, the Friday of the Combine, that the Bears worked out one of the big trades we've seen in recent NFL memory with Carolina that leaves us where we are today, with Chicago having the first pick in this draft, which originally belonged to the Panthers. I think we have all expected this to be a week that was going to be a lot about Justin Fields. Tell everybody what you told us this morning about something that may be somewhat surprising that is developing there.
Well, yeah, I think there's some questions arising about sort of just how robust the market will be for Justin Fields. And, you look at potential destinations, you start to hear a lot about the Atlanta Falcons possibly being interested in Kirk Cousins if he gets out of Minnesota and hits the open market. And if he's their top choice and goes there, that takes away a spot because the Bears probably aren't trading Fields to the Vikings in their own division. It sounds like, Pittsburgh talking up Kenny Pickett. Are they going to try and run it back with him? And if so, would that mean they're not a suitor? So you do start to wonder as you talk to people around here if there's going to be a strong market. I do think they will move him, assuming they decide to stay put and make the pick. I do think they'll move him, but it could affect the value that they're able to get back in return for him if there are not a lot of teams bidding for him.
All right, so help me, Mike T, because I'm not a business. My business sense of this isn't as good as others might be, and obviously this again is directly up your alley. If you're the general manager of the Bears and you're finding out that the demand at this moment for Justin Fields isn't what you hoped it would be, does it behoove you to make a deal as quickly as you can, or does it behold you to wait? We get into the beginning of free agency, let a couple of other teams make their moves, maybe someone is left desperate. Does it behoove him to move quickly or more slowly if it isn't what he expected it to be?
Greeny, you got to make the trade right now, and Ryan Poles has done an unbelievable job as the GM of the Bears. Look, they got the first pick in the draft, not because it's theirs, it's the Panthers. So he has to run the exact same play, and here's why. You don't want to have seats taken. So, for example, Atlanta probably has some interest in Justin Fields today. I'm sure they're also talking to Kirk Cousins' agent, hypothetically in Indy. Those conversations happen from time to time. But if Kirk Cousins signs with the Atlanta Falcons, that's one less spot. So what you can't have happen, and Greeny, you covered the Bears, you can't have Caleb Williams drafted with Justin Fields there because now you're going to redshirt Caleb Williams, and every day you're going to talk about when does Caleb Williams play. So to me, you have to make the trade as quickly as possible, get the best deal you can, move on, presumably draft Caleb Williams, and that's your team for this year.
Yeah, D Wood, there is no circumstance based upon the dynamic that he's talking about, forget about all the rest of it, just the dynamics of the quarterback room and of the fans and everything else. There's no world in which if they're not getting what they want for Fields, they should keep him and still make the pick.
Absolutely not. I agree with Mike T. If you're going to make a move, make it now. You would create such an awkward dynamic in the quarterback room because, Greeny, of all the rooms on a football team, that's the most delicate room on a team is the quarterback room. You don't want to create a situation where it's awkward between two guys. One guy's is in limbo, another guy who is literally like the number one pick in the draft.
Yeah.
So I think for the sake of the organization, you make the trade, clear that room out, and make way for whoever's going to be the new quarterback for your franchise.
Lewis, so when you hear Graziano and again telling us that maybe the market isn't what we expected it to be for Justin Fields, what is your reaction to that? I think I have felt all along, and I feel like most people have felt all along, there are going to be teams beating down the door for Justin Fields when this opportunity came along. What is your reaction if indeed the case is that it isn't like that?
It's not surprising simply because, look, Justin has been a polarizing player going back to before he was even selected by Chicago. There were people who thought Justin's a slow processor. Justin's a product of the system. Justin's a product of all the people around him at Ohio State. Ohio State quarterbacks don't ever really pan out until obviously C.J. Stroud blew that out of the water. The same kind of things they tried to attach to him before he was drafted by Houston and became the best thrower of all the rookie quarterbacks in 2023. So there are people who like Justin who still feel as though he has not even come close to scratching the surface of his potential. And there are people who believe that his time in Chicago is indicative of what his time is going to be regardless of where he goes, because they don't think that he is just an upper echelon player. So it doesn't surprise me at all that the market isn't like absolutely on fire for him. But you know what? It only takes one team. That's all it takes. It takes one team, one coach, one GM to say, hey, look, we think he wasn't set up for success. We think we can help him out. And the deal's done. And it really doesn't matter what the consensus is after that.
Go ahead, Mike T.
Yeah, Greeny, I think what's really important here is the inverse of not making the trade. The best analogy we could come up with was Philadelphia. When they drafted Carson Wentz and had Sam Bradford, they were initially not going to play Carson Wentz. Then Teddy Bridgewater had that bizarre, unfortunate injury with Minnesota. And now Minnesota basically overpays to go get Sam Bradford. They have a good team, and the rest is history. So you could wait if you're the Bears, but it's far from ideal, and you just have to sit there and see if someone else gets hurt. So to me, do exactly what you did a year ago. Get the best deal you can, because if not, this could go all the way into August or September, and that's not ideal for a new young quarterback.
Greeny, if I could just jump in here real quick. It just reminds me, and Mike, I'm not sure we'll agree with this. Like it reminds you like of the first 48 hours of free agency, right? It's always a seller's market then. It becomes a buyer's market the longer it starts to extend. Because then I don't think necessarily people panic. People then go, hey, look, you're coming back to my price now. You're coming back. The first 48 hours of free agency, I'm sure Mike would say, look, that's when he has struck the worst deals. Because that's when people are at their most euphoric.
And one of them sitting right next to Mike Greenberg.
Wow.
Yes, we were having this conversation this morning.
I shouldn't say the worst.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say the worst. I would just say the most expensive.
It was expensive.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Damien Wood, he has one wing in his house that Bill Belichick paid for. He has another that Matt Millen paid for. Mike T just paid for the art. That's pretty much all it was. All right.